Hello all, Rick here, and welcome to another look at a Starfleet ship, one that is a staple of their working armada, but again one that proved to be surprisingly variable in the roles it could undertake, the Nebula class cruiser. Behind the scenes, the Nebula class was created initially as a kit bash of the Galaxy class to act simply as background debris for the best of both worlds, the devastated fleet of Wolf 359. The vessel was then fleshed out into a full design for later use as an active ship, retroactively inserting itself into Trek history as a vessel that existed before the Galaxy class. These initial Nebula-class ships actually featured 4 nacelles, although the placement varied with 2 smaller ones on the rear then moved up to the top of the saucer, where the mission pod would later affix. The new model was designed by Rick Sternbach and Mike Okuda and built by Greg Jean, and originally the vessel was supposed to have larger windows, giving it a smaller size than its final outcome. This did not come to pass as the saucer remained the same size as the Galaxy class, so the scale was increased elsewhere to match, and the sensor pod was added to balance the ship out more. However, it still did not look streamlined enough, leading to the revamped weapons pod seen more commonly from then on. The rapidity of production of the ship led to several small design parts being absent, like the lack of impulse engines, so a workaround explanation was added to its design that it had covered impulse drives for stealth purposes, and any emissions would be released elsewhere. Additionally, this was not considered to be a big issue, as impulse drive effectively incorporates lightweight warp technology to move, just at sublight speeds, and that does not produce conventional thrust. The lore of Star Trek borrows and reflects the design process of the model, as is common. The Galaxy-class Starship began early designs in 2343 with the prototype USS Galaxy launching in 2357, the same year as the launch of the USS Nebula. The Nebula class was envisioned as an exploration cruiser with a focus on scientific and data accumulation, much like the later Lunar class. Borrowing heavily from the lengthy design period of the Galaxy class, it pretty much compiled the design styles and technology at play within the future all-rounder, just on a more compact and less powerful build. This is why its design shares the saucer shape and scale, nacelle size, deflector system and engineering whole, albeit in a different configuration. It drew heavily from its contemporary project, and funnily enough was completed before the Galaxy-class line entered production. The USS Nebula appears to have had the registry NX 60000, but it has also been listed under several other registries, including NCC 60147. So I assume when it was commissioned properly it was re-registered. Right away, the most identifiable feature of the Nebula is the mission pod on the back that can be removed and replaced with differing ones depending on the mission profile required, something that Starfleet had experimented with before on the Miranda class with its roll bar attachment and variations. There are early appearances of the Nebula class with both this oval sensor pod and with extra nacelles, suggesting these were the earliest mission pods. The extra nacelles were probably to supplement its own warp drive for either further range or faster speeds, but these soon vanished from the lines with future models, suggesting they became superfluous to the Nebula's existing systems. The sensor pod, however, would remain and provided incredible acuity and range, making the Nebula class ideal for survey missions and, more clandestinely, listening and eavesdropping operations and communication interception. This saw them deployed on a variety of scientific missions to collect data, but also sent into zones of interest, so Starfleet could listen out and gather intelligence. Considering the stealth-based impulse drive system, which dampened emissions, making it harder to detect at long range, such sneaky situations were planned and not merely an afterthought. While the primary construction facility was the ASDB integration facility at Utopia Planitia, the warp cores were made by the Yoyodyne divisions, and a construction of other Nebula-class ships was handled at the 40 Eridani A Starfleet construction yard and the San Francisco Fleet Yards between 2363 to 2367. The ship was 442.23 metres long, 318.11 metres wide, and 130.43 metres tall, with a mass of 3,309,000 tonnes. It had 21 decks, not including the mission pod, and a crew of 750 officers with the ability to house 130 guests. This shows that it did have operational capacity as a transport vessel, or to entertain gatherings. After all, why not? It was a rather large vessel, and the general rule that Starfleet operates by is that the bigger the ship, the more variable its roles can be. It had an emergency evacuation capacity of 9,800 people and was capable of emergency source of separation, although it was a pre-galaxy, which means it probably required a starbase to reattach it. At launch, the vessel had a maximum warp of 9.3, although its warp core was the 1,500 plus Yoyodyne division core, which was arguably capable of much more with the right treatment. By the height of its production, the warp limit had increased to 9.5 as a maximum speed, while 9.6 could be achieved with engine burnout after 12 hours, rivaling the Galaxy class, although some reports have had them even reaching 9.9. Presumably this is pushing the Nebula well beyond its safe theoretical maximums. The Nebula class would see some more attention visited upon it with the build-up to the Dominion War, when the ships were called back for a quick refit. The advantage of the mission pod was that overhauling them to be combat ready was a quick process once a new weapons platform had been designed. Starfleet, ever being reluctant to make any tool for war that could not also serve another purpose, opted for a torpedo platform that could also launch a myriad of sensor probes. This maintained its original function somewhat as a sensor platform, just now with an array of far-reaching probes in place of the optimized and powerful sensor disk. This new attachment became standard issue, and most Nebula classes were called back to have this added, outfitting them for battle. The Nebula itself had 2 torpedo launchers, one fore and one aft, but this pod gave it another 2 at least, as well as a much larger reserve of projectiles. It had 8 of the standard Type 10 variety phaser strips, and this gave it an effective weapons range of 300,000 kilometers. In 2374, the Nebula was also a testbed for Starfleet's new point defense phaser system, which was a fully automated, low-power phaser system that was designed to purely target and bring down incoming projectiles. The auxiliary craft included 12 shuttles of medium to large size, 6 shuttle pods, and 4 worker bees for maintenance. So, the Nebula class is a vessel that served its role well and had a handful of tasks and profiles that it could accommodate. Unparalleled at surveys, it always had a military application too, which became more apparent in the Dominion War. Eventually, this design appears to have been phased out, considering its mission profile is replaced by the Lunar class, which also borrows elements of its design, and the later Sutherland class, which is an overall upgrade of the Nebula. It is safe to say then that the Nebula has likely ended production in favour of these newer ships, but nonetheless stood out in its era as a commendable vessel and a solid backbone for Starfleet's exploratory arm. I've been Rick, and I'll see you later for another lore breakdown video, so until then, thanks again, and goodbye.